Silicon Valley's dark secret in that San Francisco courtroom, 34-year-old software engineer Sarah Chen clutched a flash drive that was about to blow up a tech giant's $50 billion empire. The documents stored on this tiny device would expose how one of America's biggest technology companies had been systematically ripping off code from smaller firms, like a damn vampire sucking the life out of startups. Sarah's hands were shaking like a leaf. This was at the moment she'd been fighting for over 3 grueling years. Across from her sat 15 stone-cold lawyers from MegaTech Corporation, all decked out in their fancy suits, trying to stare her down like she was some kind of threat to national security. But Sarah knew there was no turning back now. That flash drive wasn't just some piece of hardware, it was a smoking gun that could blow the lid off the biggest corporate theft scandal in tech history. When dreams were still alive, the whole mess started 3 years back when Sarah was busting her ass as a senior developer at TechNova, this hot little startup that was cooking up some revolutionary encryption software. Picture this: 20 young, hungry engineers crammed into a cramped Palo Alto office, surviving on pizza and Red Bull, thinking they were gonna change the world. Sarah's team had created something that was absolutely mind-blowing, an algorithm that could crunch data 300% faster than anything else out there. It was like they discovered fire while everyone else was still banging rocks together. TechNova's founder and CEO, Michael Rodriguez, was this 29-year-old MIT hotshot who'd started the company in his garage with money borrowed from his mom. The guy was a walking ball of energy, always talking about how their algorithm was gonna revolutionize cybersecurity forever. "We're not just building software here," Michael would say during those late-night coding sessions, his eyes blazing with that entrepreneurial fire. "We're creating the future. Every line of code we write is gonna protect millions of people from hackers and cyber criminals." Sarah totally bought into that vision. She was putting in 80-hour weeks, perfecting every single line of code like she was Michelangelo painting the damn Sistine Chapel. The whole team was running on pure adrenaline and ambition. The office had this electric atmosphere where everyone felt like they were part of something bigger than themselves. They were getting ready for their IPO, talking to investors, dreaming about being the next big success story. Sarah had already started house hunting, thinking about finally paying off her student loans. Life was good to good, as it turned out. If you want to follow stories like this about corporate corruption and justice battles, don't forget to subscribe to Justice System USA. We bring you America's most complex legal cases that'll blow your mind. The first red flag: the thing went to hell during what should have been a routine security check. Sarah was running some standard diagnostics when she spotted something that made her blood run cold: unauthorized access logs in their system. At first, she figured it was probably just some technical glitch, or maybe a junior developer screwing around where they shouldn't be. But when she dug deeper, she found something that made her stomach drop like she was on a roller coaster from hell. Someone had been copying their source code for months. Not just taking a peek, we're talking full-scale industrial espionage. Downloading everything from their precious algorithms to their coffee order receipts. The digital fingerprints led to a discovery that hit her like a freight train. The thief was MegaTech Corporation, the same company that had been sweet-talking them about a potential partnership just 6 months earlier. Sarah's heart started pounding like a jackhammer. MegaTech wasn't just any company, they were one of the absolute titans of the tech world. We're talking about a $50 billion monster with more lawyers than some countries have soldiers. Why the hell would a company like that need to steal code from a little startup that was barely keeping the lights on? Her investigation uncovered a pattern that was more disturbing than a horror movie. MegaTech's smooth-talking representatives had visited TechNova under the pretense of discussing collaboration. These weren't just friendly business meetings, they were military-style infiltration operations. During those handshake and smile sessions, they'd secretly planted keyloggers and network monitoring tools like digital time bombs. Every algorithm, every breakthrough, every piece of innovation was being stolen in real time. It was like having burglars in your house who didn't just take your stuff, they moved in and started cataloging everything you owned while you served them coffee. The rabbit hole goes deeper. What Sarah discovered next made her want to throw up. Internal emails revealed that MegaTech had an entire department called competitive intelligence, which was just a fancy way of saying professional thieves in business suits. These people weren't gathering market research, they were running a full-scale criminal enterprise. Their playbook was diabolically simple: target small companies with promising tech, steal their innovations through corporate espionage, then either bury the original creators in an avalanche of lawsuits or buy them out for pennies on the dollar when they were bleeding money from legal fees. One email was so damning it could have been evidence in a mob trial. MegaTech's senior vice president, David Harrison, had sent this gem to his team: identify target companies, acquire their technology through any means necessary, then eliminate them from the market. No one can compete with our resources. Reading those emails was like watching a documentary about serial killers. You couldn't believe people could be so coldly calculating about destroying other people's lives. This wasn't just business competition, it was corporate murder. Sarah discovered that TechNova wasn't even close to being their first victim. Dozens of small tech firms had suffered the same fate. What everyone in the industry thought was natural selection or market forces was actually a systematic campaign of theft and destruction. Want to see more stories about corporate crimes and justice served? Make sure to hit that subscribe button on Justice System USA and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations. The confrontation from hell. When TechNova's CEO Michael Rodriguez confronted MegaTech about the theft, it was like watching David walk up to Goliath, except Goliath had a team of attack lawyers instead of a slingshot. The meeting took place in MegaTech's gleaming corporate headquarters, one of those glass towers that screams, "We have more money than God." Michael walked into that conference room with printouts of the evidence, thinking he was gonna have a reasonable conversation about corporate ethics. What he got instead was a masterclass in corporate intimidation. MegaTech's legal team, led by their chief counsel Patricia Winters, a woman who looked like she ate startups for breakfast, denied everything with the kind of straight face that would make a poker player jealous. Any similarities in code are purely coincidental, she said, like she was discussing the weather. We develop everything independently. These accusations are not only false, they're defamatory. Then came the threats, delivered with the kind of cold professionalism that made your blood freeze. Mr. Rodriguez, Winters continued, if you pursue this line of accusation, you'll find yourself facing a legal battle that will consume every penny your little company has. We have resources you can't even imagine. We'll bury you in paperwork and legal fees until you're bankrupt and forgotten. But Sarah had something they didn't expect: a complete digital paper trail that was more detailed than an FBI surveillance file. Her background in cybersecurity had taught her to document everything, and boy, had she documented this theft down to the last stolen semicolon. War is declared. The legal battle that followed was more brutal than a cage fight. MegaTech deployed what can only be described as a legal army. We're talking about dozens of high-priced attorneys who probably charged more per hour than most people make in a month. They spent millions trying to discredit TechNova's claims, hiring expert witnesses who testified with straight faces that the code similarities were just standard industry practices. These weren't just any experts, they were industry legends who commanded respect and hefty fees. Dr. Robert Kim, a former MIT professor who'd written textbooks on software engineering, testified that the code similarities were statistically inevitable in modern programming. It was like watching respected scientists explain why the Earth was flat. But MegaTech wasn't content with just playing defense. They launched a nuclear counterattack, filing their own lawsuit, claiming that TechNova had actually stolen their intellectual property. It was the legal equivalent of a burglar suing the homeowner for having stealable stuff in their house. The psychological warfare was relentless. TechNova's investors started getting mysterious calls questioning the company's legal situation. Employees began receiving job offers from MegaTech competitors. The message was clear: abandon ship or get crushed. Michael Rodriguez was feeling the pressure like a submarine diving too deep. The company's cash flow dried up faster than a puddle in Death Valley. Investors ran for the hills. Employees started jumping ship like rats fleeing the Titanic. The office that used to buzz with excitement became a morgue where people whispered about resumes and backup plans. "Maybe we should just settle," Michael told Sarah one particularly dark evening as they watched another employee clean out their desk. "Maybe this fight is bigger than us." "Hell no," Sarah shot back, her eyes blazing with determination. "If we give up now, they'll do this to hundreds more companies. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about every little guy trying to make it in tech." Corporate battles like this show why we need to keep fighting for justice. If these stories matter to you, subscribe to Justice System USA, where we expose the truth about America's biggest legal battles. The courtroom showdown. When the trial finally started, it was like something out of a legal thriller, except the stakes were real, and the consequences would affect thousands of lives. The San Francisco courthouse became ground zero for what the media called the trial of the century in tech circles. Sarah became the star witness, and man, did she deliver. Her testimony was like watching a master surgeon perform an operation. Precise, methodical, and absolutely devastating. She walked the jury through every piece of evidence with the kind of detail that would make a forensic investigator proud. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment, "what I'm about to show you isn't just corporate theft, it's a systematic campaign to destroy innovation in America." She demonstrated how MegaTech had infiltrated their systems with the skill of a digital detective solving a cybercrime. The courtroom fell silent as she showed how lines of code had been copied character by character, like a thief photocopying someone's diary. The defense tried every trick in the book to discredit her. They painted her as a disgruntled employee seeking her 15 minutes of fame, questioning her mental state, her technical competence, even her motives for speaking out. MegaTech's lead attorney, James Crawford, a shark in an expensive suit, went after her like she was a hostile witness in a murder trial. "Miss Chen," Crawford said with that condescending tone lawyers perfect in law school, "isn't it true that you were passed over for promotion at TechNova? Isn't this all just revenge against a company that didn't appreciate your contributions?" Sarah's response was ice cold and deadly accurate. "Mr. Crawford, the only thing I want revenge against is a system that lets billion-dollar companies steal from innovators and get away with it. The evidence speaks for itself, and it's screaming that your client is guilty as sin." The exchange was so intense that spectators in the courtroom held their breath. Even the judge leaned forward, clearly impressed by Sarah's composure under fire. The smoking gun turning point came when Sarah revealed what prosecutors called the smoking gun recorded conversations between MegaTech executives discussing their theft strategy like they were planning a bank heist. The most damaging recording was a conversation between David Harrison and MegaTech's CTO, Mark Stevens, captured during what they thought was a private executive meeting. Harrison's voice came through the courtroom speakers clear as day. "We take what we need when we need it. These startup kids are too naive to protect themselves properly. By the time they figure out what happened, we've already integrated their tech and moved on to the next target. It's not personal, it's just business." Stevens' response was even more chilling. "What about the legal risks? Some of these companies might fight back." Harrison's laugh was cold enough to freeze blood. "With what money? We'll drown them in legal fees before they can say intellectual property. Besides, who's gonna believe a bunch of kids in a garage over a Fortune 100 company?" When that recording played in the courtroom, you could have heard a pin drop. Several jury members looked physically sick. MegaTech's lawyers objected frantically, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped, and everyone could see the monster underneath. More victims come forward as the trial gained national attention. Something incredible happened. Other victims started coming out of the woodwork. It was like Sarah had lit a fire that spread across the entire tech industry. CompuLink, a small AI startup from Austin, revealed that MegaTech had stolen their machine learning algorithms. DataStream, an analytics company from Seattle, showed evidence of their visualization technology being ripped off. Oneclick, a mobile app developer from Denver, proved that MegaTech had stolen their user interface designs. The pattern was always the same: friendly meetings about partnership opportunities, followed by mysterious system breaches, followed by MegaTech releasing suspiciously similar products within months. Jennifer Walsh, CEO of CompuLink, testified via video link, her voice shaking with emotion. "They destroyed 5 years of my life's work in 6 months. We had 17 employees, good people with families. They're all unemployed now because MegaTech stole our technology and then undercut our prices until we had to shut down." The revelation that this was an industry-wide conspiracy sent shockwaves through Silicon Valley. Tech blogs exploded with headlines like "The Great Tech Heist" and "How MegaTech Murdered Innovation." Stories like this prove why investigative journalism matters. Stay informed about corporate corruption by subscribing to Justice System USA. We're not afraid to take on the big guys. The defense crumbles. MegaTech's defense strategy fell apart faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Their expert witnesses started contradicting each other. Internal documents kept leaking that supported Sarah's claims. Even their own employees began distancing themselves from the company line. The most devastating moment came when Dr. Lisa Park, MegaTech's own former head of R&D, took the stand as a surprise witness for TechNova. She'd been one of the architects of the competitive intelligence program and had finally grown a conscience. "I couldn't sleep at night knowing what we'd done to these companies," she testified, tears streaming down her face. "We weren't innovating. We were stealing. We turned the tech industry into a hunting ground where the biggest predator won by cheating." She revealed that MegaTech had a database of over 200 targeted companies, complete with detailed profiles of their technologies, key personnel, and vulnerabilities. It was like a military target list for corporate warfare. The courtroom erupted when she showed internal memos describing employees as acquisition targets and elimination priorities. These weren't business strategies, they were war plans. The verdict that shook Silicon Valley after 6 hours of deliberation that felt like 6 years. The jury returned with a verdict that sent shockwaves through the entire tech industry. The foreman, a retired engineer who understood the technical evidence better than most, stood up and delivered the words that would change everything. "We find the defendant, MegaTech Corporation, guilty on all counts of willful patent infringement, theft of trade secrets, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit corporate espionage." The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for their phones. MegaTech's lawyers looked like they'd been hit by a truck. Michael Rodriguez broke down crying. Sarah just sat there, stunned, like she couldn't quite believe it was over. Judge Maria Santos delivered the financial verdict with the kind of gravity reserved for death sentences. The court awards TechNova damages in the amount of $2.3 billion, one of the largest intellectual property settlements in American legal history. But she wasn't done. In a scathing statement that made headlines around the world, Judge Santos declared, "MegaTech Corporation has operated like a criminal enterprise, systematically destroying innovation and entrepreneurship. This behavior is not just unethical, it's un-American. Today, we send a message that no company, regardless of size, is above the law." Victory's bitter price-seat victory celebration was shorter than a TikTok video. Yeah, they'd won. And yeah, they were about to get a massive payout. But the cost was brutal. TechNova had spent 3 years fighting instead of innovating. Their revolutionary technology was now obsolete, surpassed by newer developments. The company was forced to shut down anyway, leaving dozens of brilliant engineers without jobs. Michael Rodriguez summed it up perfectly at what became their final company meeting. "We won the war, but we lost everything we were fighting for. The money doesn't bring back the dreams, the time, or the team we built." Sarah felt the weight of that victory like a stone in her chest. They'd proven their point, exposed the corruption, and gotten justice, but at what cost? The startup ecosystem had lost another innovative company, and the tech world had lost the breakthrough technology that could have changed cybersecurity forever. The target on Sarah's back. Winning the case painted a target on Sarah's back the size of Texas. The death threat started almost immediately. Anonymous emails, phone calls at a.m., packages with no return address. Someone hacked her social media accounts and posted fake information designed to discredit her. The harassment wasn't random, it was sophisticated, coordinated, and clearly funded by someone with serious resources. Private investigators started following her. Her credit rating mysteriously tanked. Job applications disappeared into black holes. "They can't touch me legally now," Sarah told her lawyer during one particularly rough week, "so they're trying to destroy my life piece by piece." The psychological pressure was intense. Sarah started having panic attacks, trouble sleeping, and trust issues that went bone deep. She had to move 3 times in 2 years, change her phone number twice, and basically live like a witness in protection. The industry reckoning MegaTech case blew the lid off what investigators called the biggest corporate crime wave in tech history. Congressional hearings revealed that dozens of major tech companies had similar competitive intelligence programs. It was like discovering that half the industry was running protection rackets. Senator Elizabeth Warren led the congressional investigation with the kind of righteous fury that made corporate executives sweat through their designer suits. "What we've uncovered," she declared during nationally televised hearings, "is systematic theft that makes the robber barons of the 19th century look like small-time pickpockets." The hearings revealed the scope of the problem: over 500 documented cases of corporate espionage, billions in stolen intellectual property, and thousands of jobs lost to unfair competition. It wasn't just a few bad apples, it was a rotten system that rewarded theft and punished innovation. These kinds of congressional investigations and corporate accountability stories are exactly what we cover on Justice System USA. Subscribe now to stay informed about the legal battles that shape America. New laws, old tricks. The fallout led to the passage of the Innovation Protection Act, quickly nicknamed the Sarah Chen Law by tech industry insiders. The law required transparency in corporate meetings, mandatory recording of technical discussions, and severe penalties for corporate espionage. But laws are only as good as their enforcement, and the big tech companies adapted faster than viruses, developing resistance to antibiotics. They found new ways to accomplish the same goals using offshore subsidiaries, hiring consultants to do their dirty work, and developing more sophisticated espionage techniques. Sarah watched these developments with the weary eye of someone who'd seen behind the curtain. "They're not playing by different rules now," she observed. "They're just better at hiding it." Sarah's new mission these days. Sarah operates out of a modest office in Oakland, running a cybersecurity consulting firm called Digital Justice Solutions. Her client list reads like a who's who of small tech companies that have learned from TechNova's example. Every week brings new horror stories. Just last month, a VR startup from Portland contacted her after discovering that a major gaming company had been systematically copying their motion tracking algorithms. A blockchain developer from Miami found evidence that their cryptocurrency protocols were being stolen by a financial services giant. "The game has changed, but it hasn't stopped," Sarah explains during a typical consultation, her office walls covered with whiteboards full of security protocols and legal strategies. "The big companies have gotten smarter about covering their tracks, but they're still hunting." Her reputation as the woman who took down MegaTech has made her something of a legend in certain circles. Startup founders seek her out like people seeking a guru, hoping her experience can protect them from the same fate that befell TechNova. The human cost personal toll on Sarah has been devastating in ways that newspaper headlines never capture. She's in her late 30s now, single, estranged from family members who couldn't handle the constant stress and media attention. The woman who once dreamed of changing the world through technology now spends her days helping others avoid becoming victims. "I used to love coding," she admits, during rare moments of vulnerability. "I'd lose myself for hours in the beauty of elegant algorithms and efficient solutions. Now, every line of code I see makes me wonder who's trying to steal it." The paranoia isn't irrational, it's survival. Sarah's learned to spot surveillance, encrypt everything, and trust no one completely. It's a hell of a way to live, but it's the price of standing up to corporate giants. The next generation, despite everything, Sarah hasn't given up on the dream that originally drove her into tech. She started mentoring young engineers, teaching them not just how to code, but how to protect their innovations from corporate predators. Her informal, Sarah's Army, a network of developers, security experts, and legal advocates, has become a force in Silicon Valley. They share information about suspicious corporate activities, warn each other about potential threats, and collectively bargain for better legal protections. The big companies are counting on us being isolated and vulnerable, Sarah tells her mentees during their weekly security workshops. But if we stick together, if we watch each other's backs, we can level the playing field. The ongoing war fight against corporate espionage is far from over. New cases emerge regularly, each one a variation on the same theme: big companies stealing from small ones, using their resources to avoid consequences, and leaving a trail of destroyed dreams in their wake. Just this year, Sarah's team has documented 3 major cases of theft that mirror the MegaTech pattern. Each time, they've helped the victims gather evidence, navigate the legal system, and fight back against seemingly impossible odds. The success rate isn't perfect. Big companies still win more often than they lose, but the victories are becoming more frequent. More importantly, the culture of silence and acceptance around corporate theft is starting to crack. Legacy of a flash drive that started it all now sits in the Smithsonian Museum's American Enterprise exhibit, next to displays about other pivotal moments in business history. The little plastic device that brought down a $50 billion company has become a symbol of how individual courage can challenge corporate power. Museum visitors often ask tour guides about the story behind the flash drive. Kids doing school reports on corporate responsibility learn about Sarah Chen and TechNova. Business schools use the case as a cautionary tale about ethical leadership and the importance of protecting innovation. But for Sarah, the real legacy isn't in a museum case, it's in every small company that now knows how to protect itself, every entrepreneur who understands their rights, and every developer who refuses to be intimidated by corporate bullies. What comes next? Sarah's not done fighting. At 37, she's already planning her next move: a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing legal defense for small tech companies facing corporate espionage. The Innovation Defense Fund would level the playing field by giving startups access to the same quality legal representation that big companies take for granted. "We proved that you can win against the giants," she says, looking out the window of her Oakland office at the San Francisco skyline, where MegaTech's headquarters still dominates the horizon. But winning shouldn't require someone to sacrifice their entire life. We need to make it easier for the next person who finds themselves in this situation. The tech industry is still evolving, still growing, still creating opportunities for both innovation and exploitation. Sarah's story is far from over. If anything, it's just the end of the first chapter in a larger battle for the soul of Silicon Valley. The fight for corporate accountability and justice continues every day. To stay informed about these crucial battles and support the people fighting for fairness in America's legal system, subscribe to Justice System USA. Together, we can make sure these stories get told and these fights get fought. The price of truth today. As Sarah reviews security reports and prepares for another day of protecting innovators from predators, she sometimes wonders what her life would have been like if she just kept quiet about what she discovered at TechNova. She'd probably be wealthy, successful, maybe running her own company by now. But when she gets emails from entrepreneurs whose companies she's helped save, when she sees young developers who've learned to protect their work because of lessons from her case, when she reads about new laws that make corporate espionage harder to get away with, she knows she made the right choice. The flash drive that changed everything sits in a museum now, but the spirit it represents lives on in every person who refuses to let corporate giants steal their dreams. Sarah Chen's war against corporate theft isn't just her story, it's America's story, and it's far from over. Sometimes David really can beat Goliath. But the victory always comes at a price that few people are willing to pay. Sarah paid it, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because in the end, some fights are worth everything you've got. The question isn't whether there will be more MegaTechs trying to steal from more TechNovas. The question is whether there will be more Sarah Chens willing to stand up and fight back. For the sake of innovation, entrepreneurship, and the American dream itself, we better hope the answer is yes.